Hello everyone. My name is Emil. This is my very first YouTube video, and the purpose of making this is to hopefully provide you with some useful tips for the Japanese language proficiency test, also known as JLPT. As mentioned in the title, I did score 180 out of 180 in the December 2019 N1 test. It was also my first time taking JLPT, and I had around 3 months to self-study. I hope this video inspires you in some way. Do let me know in the comments if this video helps, and if you have any specific questions you want me to address in another video. To start, I spent around 50% of my study time on just JLPT past papers, which included breaking down the test format, tracking my study progress, and doing practice tests. 30% of my time went to JLPT books and apps, and the rest 20% went to flashcards like Quizlet and Anki. I am always a good test taker instead of someone who is genuinely smart. My method for learning everything can be broken down into 3 steps. The first step and the key step is to have a detailed study plan, study outline, or syllabus, whatever you want to call it. That includes how you are going to be graded, and what you are going to be tested on. The second step is to find reliable source to learn from. It could be textbooks, video series, or even just apps. You want to explore your options until you find a few that work best for you. The third step is to memorize what you learned. I do this by using the spaced repetition method. The first step is the most important one because when you are preparing for a test, you need to study the test. That's right, not study for the test, but study the test itself. Unfortunately, JLPT is probably not going to reflect one's true proficiency, and that's the problem with all standardized tests. Fortunately, for those who need to prove their language proficiency, it's usually easier to work around a test, since the objective is more clear. The clear objective is also essential for both self-studying and when you have limited time to study. In my case, I built my study plan based on the test format. Before you sign up for a Japanese language proficiency test, you want to look at everything their website or the test itself can tell you. The test is completely multiple choice. There is no speaking and writing, only listening and reading. If you have read their requirements for each level and decided which level you are going to write, the next step is to look at the test format. I spent most of my time looking at their composition of test items file. I have put the links in the description box below. The test items are basically all the question types you are going to see on your test. For JLPT, they are fixed and always come in the same order. In this chart, they tell you your given time for each section of the test, the different test items and their purposes. What I did was I took the chart and added a few columns. First, I put down ideally how long I should spend on each question. I will talk a bit more about the time issue later on. Next, instead of keeping the purpose column, I summarized it. For example, the first test item says test reading of words written in kanji. I would note down pronunciation of kanji instead. To ace this test item, my goal is to recognize a large list of words in kanji and be able to write them in kana. A JLPT book will guide me to which words I need to know, and using the spell mode from Quizlet will make sure I know their pronunciation. For some question types, there are ways to eliminate options easily. Also, there are questions that allow you to cut some time. For question 1 particularly, you can ignore the sentence and only read the underlined word to save time. You may want to do the above mentioned steps for every single test item. Let's get back to our chart. Lastly, I wrote down my progress and my current focus on each test item. For example, we have both onyomi and kunyomi questions for test item 1. If I did horribly on onyomi during my last mock test, I would write down focus on onyomi. The other columns were to keep track of my mock test results. This way you will have a well-organized study outline, and you can track and update your progress easily. I recommend adding extra columns according to your personal needs. The idea is that since the test format is fixed, there is no reason for you to not establish a study plan based on what you will see on the test. Another advantage is that you can save a lot of time by not having to read test instructions and sample questions. I won't dive into the time issue in this video, but in case you are not already aware, time is very limited during the actual test. You will run out of time unless you do things smartly. You really want to save most of your time for the reading section. So that was the key to my study method. Let's move on to my study routine and resources used. I find my routine much in common with a lot of people, and there is nothing fancy. You want to grab actual JLPT books and apps because they've already put everything together for you. I like to try out my options in the beginning and eliminate ones that don't work for me. What matters is what works for you. In my case, I use this series with cute animal covers for kanji, vocabulary and reading comprehension, so pretty much for everything except for listening and grammar. I can recall things very quickly if they came to me in groups like how this series does it. I also liked how this series suggests how much you should learn every day, but again, how you use the books is completely up to you. This series is less explanatory and more like a word list, but works well when used together with flashcard apps. I personally needed a lot more examples and explanations for just grammar, so I also used Shinkansen Master's grammar book. To make sure what I learned sank in, I made flashcards using Quizlet and Anki daily as I studied new material. Anki focuses on spaced repetition, that is, showing you more difficult material more frequently. Quizlet provides more learning modes, and I use their spell mode most frequently to practice spelling things out. During the day, whenever I have a few minutes, I would either do a flashcard review or some past listening questions on apps like JLPT N1 and JLPT Practice N1 to N5. Any JLPT app with past recordings would work. I know I didn't talk about listening much, but basically this is the section you would want to really familiarize yourself with the question types and full recordings. Practice taking notes and get to know how much time you are given before they play the next question. I would then work on my workbooks for around 2 hours every day and make new flashcards. Every few days I would do a complete practice test while timing myself and update my progress for every test item. This is a summary of what I talked about in this video. Thank you for watching and I wish you good luck on your test.